In this video, we're going to solve some absolute value equations. So here's an example. Solve the absolute value of x is equal to 5. The absolute value of 4x plus 6 is equal to 2. And the absolute value of 4x plus 6 is equal to negative 2. So for part A, to say that the absolute value of x is 5, that means that x can be any real number that's exactly 5 units from 0 on the number line. So here's the number line. Here's 0. You can go 5 units to the right or 5 units to the left. If you go 5 units to the right, you're at 5. If you go 5 units to the left, you're at negative 5. So saying that the absolute value of x is equal to 5 is the same as saying that either x is 5 or x is negative 5. So that's the solution. Remember, when we're solving an equation, what we're doing is we're trying to find all the values of x that make the equation true. In this case, there's only 2, 5 and negative 5. All right, B. So the absolute value of 4x plus 6 is equal to 2. So compared to the previous problem, instead of x being in the absolute value signs, you have 4x plus 6. It might help to replace the 4x plus 6 by u. So I'm going to show this step. Replace 4x plus 6 by u. So in other words, u is equal to 4x plus 6, and we're just changing the equation so that u is in the equation. Well, if you do that, you are going to get the absolute value of u equals 2. Well, if the absolute value of u is 2, what does that mean? That means that either u is 2 or u is negative 2. Right? But u is equal to 4x plus 6. So that tells us that 4x plus 6 is 2. Okay? Or 4x plus 6 is negative 2. That's where you can conclude if the absolute value of 4x plus 6 equals 2. So now we have to figure out what x is in each of these possibilities. So in the first one, that's an or. So in the first one, we can subtract 6 from both sides. So 4x is a negative 4. And then what? We divide both sides by 4. So you get x is equal to negative 1. On the other one, 4x plus 6 equals negative 2, what's the first step? We would subtract both sides by 6. So you would get 4x equals what? Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. And then what's the next step? You divide both sides by 4. So you get x is equal to negative 2. Now, if you want, you could show the step where you do that. Okay, but I usually just skip the step and jump straight to saying what x is. So this is like optional. Okay, so you get x is negative 1 and x is negative 2. Actually, we should check that these work because so for absolute value problems, there might be some, like in this case, they both will work, but there could in theory be examples where the solutions you get don't actually make the original equation come true. So let's check that these actually work. We probably should have checked, well, we don't have to check anything for the first one, but for the second one, let's just check that x equals negative 1 works. So if you plug in negative 1, what we're doing is we are trying to see if negative 1 and negative 2 both make the original equation come true. Well, the original equation is the absolute value of 4x plus 6 equals 2. So what we do is we ask ourselves, okay, is when you plug in -4 in for x, -1 in for x on the left, is it equal to the thing on the right? Now, some teachers, when they're checking, will not put a question mark above, but I think they should, because you're asking whether the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side. So that's what the question mark is doing. You're asking if the left and right-hand sides are equal. Without the question mark, you're just saying that the two sides are equal. That's not what you're trying to say. You're trying to ask, are they equal? Because you're trying to see if they're equal or not. So on the left-hand side, I get 4 times -1 is -4. So I'm asking, is that equal to 2? -4 plus 6 is 2. Now, is the absolute value of 2 equal to 2? Well, yes, because the absolute value of 2 is just 2. So -1 is a solution. Similarly, we'll check -2. If you plug in -2 into the left-hand side, you are going to get 4 times -2 is -8. -8 plus 6 is -2. What's the absolute value of -2? It's just 2. So the left-hand side really is equal to 2, so that checks. This is another way of checking your work. Okay, by plugging in the left and just checking that you get the thing on the right. So the solution is x is -1 or x is -2. Those are the two possibilities for x. All right, C. So I'm actually just going to do the answer here. The absolute value of 4x plus 6 is -2. Well, what that would mean, if there was an x, if there was a real number x that made this equation come true, what would happen? The left-hand side is the absolute value of a number, okay? Absolute value of a number is the distance from 0. So can a distance ever be -2? No, right? The distance cannot be -2. The absolute value of a number is always 0 or above. It can never be negative. So it's not possible, because the absolute value of a number is never negative. So there's no solution. Okay. Let's do a few examples with fractions. But the way you do it is exactly the same. Like if you had, okay, here's one. The absolute value of y plus 3 is equal to 5/4. Again, we have a term inside. One thing you can do is you can just replace the y plus 3 with u. Now I'm going to skip that step because, okay, you could just do it above. And if you do what we did above here for part B, okay, I'm just going to skip from here to here. So if you do that, you are going to get y plus 3 is 5/4, or y plus 3 is -5/4, right? I mean, the way to think about it is you have an absolute value of a thing, okay? The absolute value of the thing is 5/4, therefore the thing must be 5/4 or -5/4. So once you're here, now it's just easy, right? We just subtract 3 on both sides, so you get 5/4 minus 3. How do you do 5/4 minus 3? You need a common denominator. So y is equal to 5/4 minus, how do I rewrite 3 so it has a denominator of 4? 12. 12 over 4. And 5 fourths minus 12 fourths is negative 7 fourths. So that's one possibility. Other possibility is y plus 3 is negative 5 fourths. So I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides. And now I get y is negative 5 fourths minus 3. Again, we get a common denominator. 3 is 12 over 4. Now that you have a common denominator, you can subtract the numerators. Negative 5 minus 12 is negative 17. So you get negative 17 fourths. So y is equal to negative 7 fourths or negative 17 fourths. Hold on. Yeah. And if you plug them back in, you'll see that they both are correct, that they both satisfy the equation. Okay. So one way to write it would be negative 17 fourths, comma, negative 7 fourths, just to say all the possible values of y. Let's just do another one just to make sure we're okay with fractions. So solve 5/6a plus 3/5 is equal to 1. Again, what's the first step? The first step is to rewrite the equation so that there's no absolute value sign. And here I have a blob, a thing. The absolute value of the thing is 1. So that means that there's two possibilities for the thing. It's either 1 or, what's the other possibility? Negative 1. Now we just solve the two equations. So for the first one thing you could do is you could get rid of the fractions. What can I do to both sides? So I have a denominator of 6 and a denominator of 5. What can I do to both sides to get rid of the 6 and 5 on the bottom? I can multiply both sides by 30, right, which is 6 times 5. If I multiply both sides by 30, what am I going to get? I distribute the 30 across on the left. 30 times 5 over 6. Well, 30 divided by 6 is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So I get 25a plus, and then 30 divided by 5 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. So I get 18 equals 30. Now I'm going to subtract. Now we just solve as usual. We just subtract 18 from both sides. 30 minus 18 is 12. And divide both sides by 25. So a is 12 over 25. We still have one more. Well, it's pretty much the same except with a negative 1 instead of a 1. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 30. Another thing you could do, I'm just going to do it the other way. It's like the same thing, but you could take this 5/6a and then multiply by 5 over 5. So one thing you could do, which some teachers probably do, is they multiply by 5 over 5, but you just take the 5/6a and multiply by 5 over 5. That way you get a 30 on the denominator. Do I want to do this? Well, I'll just do it anyway since I already started. And then you take the 3/5 and then multiply by 6 over 6. And then notice that I didn't change the left-hand side because I'm just multiplying each term by 1. So now I get 25 over 30a plus 18 over 30 equals negative 1. And then I can multiply both sides by 30. So then if I multiply both sides by 30, then I'm going to get 25a plus 18 equals negative 30. And then I just solve as usual. So I get 25a equals negative 30 minus 18 is negative 48. Divide both sides by 25, you get negative 48 over 25. So the solution is 12 over 25ths, negative 48 over 25. Those are the two values that will satisfy the equation. Okay. Let's just do one more. Solve for y, the absolute value of 2 minus 56y is 4. Hopefully we all know what the first step is. 2 minus 56y is 4, or 2 minus 56y is negative 4. Okay. And now we can get rid of the fractions. There's two things we could do. One thing we could do is we can multiply both sides by 6. Or you could subtract 2 on both sides first and then multiply by 6. Let's multiply. I'll just kind of show both ways, one on the left and one on the right. So if you multiply by 6 on both sides, like this, you get that. And then you distribute the 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 5, 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. So you get 5y. And then 6 times 4 is 24. Now at this point, you could subtract both sides by 12 and then divide by negative 5. Since I like to have the number in front of the variable positive, I'll probably just add 5y to both sides. So if you add 5y to both sides, you get 12 equals 5y plus 24. And I'll probably rewrite it by swapping the left and right, just so that the y is on the left. And then I'll subtract 12 on both sides. 12 minus 24 is negative 12. Now divide both sides by 5. Y is negative 12 fifths. Okay. If you have a faster way of doing it, that's also fine. I mean, you could also, subtract both sides by 12, so you get negative 5y is 12, right? And then divide both sides by negative 5, so you get 12 over negative 5, which is the same as negative 12 fifths. That's another way you could do it. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, I have 2 minus 56y equals negative 4. Now again, I could also just multiply both sides by 6, but just to explain kind of the other way of doing it, you can subtract both sides by 2, so negative 56y is negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. And now I need to divide both sides by negative 56. Well, that's the same as multiplying both sides by negative 6 fifths. So on the left, the fractions will multiply to 1, so you get y equals negative 6 times negative 6 fifths, that's 36 fifths. So the answer is negative 12 fifths, 36 fifths. Okay. Those are the two values of y that work. And yeah, you're not going to have, in this example, any issues of getting two solutions that somehow are non-solutions. That kind of thing does happen with squaring and certain other functions, but not in this example. So that's the reason why I know that these two solutions actually work without having to check. Later we'll see examples of where you get solutions, but then some of the solutions are not actually solutions. Okay, what happens if you have, I keep saying one more, I want to do two more actually. What happens if you have something like the absolute value of 4x minus 10 is equal to 0? Well, in this case, let's think about it. The absolute value of a number is equal to 0. What are all the numbers that are 0 away from 0 on the number line? 0. So that tells you that 4x minus 10 is equal to 0. And now you can just solve, you add 10 to both sides, divide both sides by 4. So x is 10/4, which I can simplify to 5/2. What if you had something like 4 plus the absolute value of 2t plus 3 is equal to 5? Well, this is pretty similar to what we did before. The only difference is that you have an absolute value of something, but then you have a plus 4. So then there's just one more step. Compared to the previous examples, you just subtract 4 on both sides. So you get the absolute value of 2t plus 3 is 5 minus 4, which is 1. And now you just do the same thing as before. 2t plus 3 is 1, or 2t plus 3 is negative 1. And then you solve each of them. For the first one, 2t is 1 minus 3, that's negative 2. Divide both sides by 2, negative 1. Then the other one, you do the same thing. 2t is negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. Divide both sides by 2. You get negative 2. So the answer is negative 1, negative 2. Those are the two values that work. Okay, so that's absolute value equalities. Equations involving absolute value and how to solve for the variable.